All right, Doug. Well, thanks for doing the interview today. And I know a lot of people would like to know what you're up to these days. And so we're going to start sort of from the beginning. And you tell us, as a child, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Minden, Nebraska, on a farm just north of town. And, had a pretty typical farm life. Graduated from Minden High School and decided I want to go to the University of Nebraska.
As a child on the farm, what was your childhood like? What did you do?
Well, I think we did very normal farming activities. We had a small farm, and we raised cattle and some hogs and a lot of corn. So in the summers, I spent most of my time irrigating with my father from a pretty young age, and we also at a pretty young age started driving tractors up and down the road, and really from about age 10, I think I was probably fairly useful as a farmhand, and really enjoyed that. That's a great work ethic builder, and high school was fun. A number of activities, lots of friends, and my particular high school class, I think we were not a class that had a lot of dates and people pairing up. We did lots of group activities, and we were everybody's best friend. And really fond memories of those times at Minden High.
Great. So is the farm still in your family?
It is. I drive by it every day on my way to work, and my father is 92, my mother is 85, and they're still on the farm. So I've got a brother, Dwayne, who is in Acacia, and Dwayne also farms in the area and works with them. But old Pops is still going strong.
Wow, that's amazing. The farm life seems to extend the life of a lot of people. It sounds like that hard work and that ethic is just seems to do wonders for some people.
It does, and I think it really teaches you tremendous work ethic. And, he's always been a hard worker, dedicated to that. He loves the farm, and he's very proud of that. And as I've grown older, I really respect that a lot. I think that's a tremendous trait. And obviously his hard work allowed his two sons to go to college.
Very true, very true. So that brings me to my next point then. As a child growing up and graduating Minden, why did you decide to go to UNL? What was your major? Yeah, talk about that story.
I think my mother was a librarian, and so from a very young age, she instilled in us that we were just going to go to college. There wasn't an if, and, or maybe about that. That was a certainty. And she also, from a very young age, read to us a lot, taught us to read. And so school was pretty natural. And I'd always had an interest in current events, and particularly in high school, I loved my American government class. I thought that was intriguing. I loved all the things we did. And between that and current events, lots of things going on in the world at that time, it led me to political science. And of course, if I knew what I knew today, there's just not a great job market for too many political scientists. They're not in high demand. But I think it did something differently for me, and that was that it was the desire to understand how institutions work, why they don't work, and I think there's an intrigue for me in public administration. And as I look back, that's a pretty useful trait for me, and one that I'm glad I had. But political science was just one of those things that I thought was a lot of fun. Headed into college, we didn't have any of those classes really in my high school, but I kind of OD'd once I got to college on political science, and I had an advisor that convinced me to take an economics class. I fell in love with economics, so I got a second major in economics.
Wow, wow. So was going back to political science, was your family engaged in politics? Did you ever work on campaigns, or was this just all a solo interest to go into politics?
Well, I think it was a solo interest. Ultimately, my goal was to go to law school, and so I think political science was a fairly natural entree into the study of law. No one in my family had ever thought about going to law school or were politically active or anything like that. I think my grandmother Kristensen was deeply embarrassed that I would want to be a lawyer. She didn't have too high of opinion of the profession, but I think my parents instilled in me that you should pursue what your passion is, pursue what you will think is interesting to do, and then go do it. And so they were very accepting. And I now see that in my daughters, and I think that my parents really passed down a wonderful trait when they instilled a little independence in their sons.
Yeah, absolutely. So that independence now that you decided on political science when you came in, did that at all influence your decision to join Acacia, or why did you end up now joining Acacia?
Well, that's probably the best story of them all. I was a Kappa Sig. I was rushed early on after high school and pledged Kappa Sig, and then had the opportunity to go to Europe with a 4-H tour for many weeks, and during the summer between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college. When I came home from that tour, Kappa Sig called and said, well, we overpledged, and we don't have room for you in the house, and you can still be a member, but we're going to have you live in the residence halls, the dormitories this first year. Well, I wanted no part of that. I was convinced early on that Acacia was or that fraternity life was a really good deal, and that was something that was important for me to do, the camaraderie, the focus on academics, but the ability to get involved. And but it's really close in time, and so the dorms at that point were full. There was no way to get back in. So the Saturday before rush week started, I packed up my car and drove from Minden to Lincoln and went to the corner of 17th and R next to Herm's Liquor and went to the phone book and got to the yellow pages, turned to fraternities, and started to go down the line and call fraternities, and Acacia was the first one in the yellow pages. And,
nice. Something to be said for alphabetical order. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I talked to them, and I think they thought I was a prank call, to be truthful. They said, well, come on down. And I think they took one long look at my long hair, and I don't think they were quite sure that I was maybe going to be the best member, but honestly, they needed members at that point. I moved in temporarily. They said, you can live here through rush week. We'll rush you like anybody else, and if it works out, it works out. If not, we bought you a little time. I went through and helped them clean the house up. I helped them get ready for rush week. I went through rush, but I really was living there through rush. And I didn't go to any other house. I stayed. And I moved out 4 years later. And it was a wonderful experience. And, I deeply owe the Acacia House a lot for a great start, because here was a kid from small town Nebraska onto the large university campus, and all of a sudden I had 60 instant friends that I could identify with a red jacket and the ACAC logos, and they gave me lots of opportunities. But how I got there was kind of a long shot route, and I told that story when I ran for IFC president, and I think they all shook their heads like, wow, who you are. You were a real long shot, buddy. But it turned out to be the best decision I ever made.
That's amazing. That's great. I've never heard of that happening before. So that's a terrific story. So you seem to have, being there for 4 years and living in. What are some of your favorite stories? Some of your favorite people and events that you remember from your time, whether it be big or small?
Well, I think right away to my first roommate was Clark Stevens, and Clark was a very bright student from Omaha, obviously, and he was in dental school, and he'd gotten into dental school early. But I think that it was really tough for Clark. He studied night and day, and the poor guy, I'm not so sure that he almost didn't flunk out that first semester, and I'm sure his roommate didn't help him much. But Clark gave me a really great perspective as a fellow from Omaha. He'd grown up in a large school. I'd grown up in a small school. We had different experiences, but Clark was a very decent man and, was very dedicated. And I really appreciate Clark because I think he gave me a lot of support when really he didn't have the time to do that, but he did it. And I remember my pledge class pretty well. My pledge father was Brian Kearney, and he was a Lincoln guy, and I'd never really been around a Lincoln guy before, and so he was a pretty good pledge father. And one of the things I remember the most is we were trying to do an alumni newsletter. I had a little bit of time, and so I volunteered to do the alumni newsletter, and I think that gave me a great start as a pledge and as a freshman, and sort of convinced me that there's a lot of value and benefit in the fraternity and working as a team. And, I really bought into what I thought the values of the fraternity were at that point, and appreciated that. It also helped, I remember a number of the social activities, because if I didn't do the fraternity social scenes, I'd have never met anybody. I'd still been a closet case for girls at that point. But, yeah. Sure,
yeah.
The melodrama, we did the melodrama with the Thetas that first year, and, wow, they were a very strong sorority, but the melodrama was really a super event that got me involved as well. And, you had a little football season. It was Coach Osborne's first season as a coach, and, we had great tickets to the football game. We sat as a pledge class together, and they really were my brothers. I mean, we did a lot of things together, and, at that point, the drinking age was 19. So, the second semester as a freshman, I was going with my buddies out to Little Bows and down to Deer Low for the water hole and the rail. And obviously, I met some of the best friends for the rest of my life in those areas, and that all was directly related to the opportunities that I had at Acacia as a freshman.
Wow. So that was just your freshman year. It seemed to be pretty packed, and Clark is still, very active, and I hear the same thing a lot about Clark. Very, empathetic and magnanimous person at the same time, and nothing but good things as well come out of Clark.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And that was really a good period of time too. The university was doing well and changing at that point, so it was a great time to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you progressed through your freshman and sophomore year, senior, in the time in the house, did you take on any leadership roles or any other either office roles or?
Yeah, I did a couple of things, and I was very lucky, and quite frankly, I don't know if the house knew it or not. And it's a little deal. They made me the outstanding pledge. Well, that was probably not a big deal to many people, but to me that was a real sense of confidence, and it sort of helped me believe in myself that, I can do this, and with a little work and effort. And showing up as 80% of the battle. I started to get a little more active that second semester. I became the rush chairman for the House after my sophomore year, and that was a big job. But I liked the idea of traveling the state and recruiting, and I also became the IFC representative, and that probably more than anything else changed my view of fraternities and the Greek system, because I saw in so many other fraternities there were people like me who had a similar experience. They just had a different name to their fraternity. And all of a sudden I became a real believer in the Greek system as a whole. Clearly Acacia was top of my list, but the value of the Greek system in sum and total was extremely good. And, you know, that's what led me to run for IFC president. I ran against a guy who was my mortal enemy. And, you know, I beat him by one vote to be president. And the only reason is that Bill Miller was the guy I ran against. Bill didn't know the Greek alphabet very well, and he couldn't figure out where AGR was. He never found it. I got the AGR vote, and I won by one. But then they did a deal where they elected him vice president, and so my mortal enemy becomes the guy I've got to work with.
Oh, God, isn't that the case of politics sometimes?
Yeah, but you know, as it turns out, that was a tremendous thing to happen. It was a little bumpy working with Bill, and we decided we had to find something for Bill to do other than IFC president. And so we began to look at involving all the fraternities and sororities in student government. And at that point in time in our careers at UNL, student government was really run by the independents on campus, and they really, you know, they used it as their own little private playground and as their little power grab, and they really weren't very responsive to what the normal student needed. And so we did a little research. We began to look at what fraternities and sororities did back in the 50s and how they gained power. And we created a thing called the faction. And the faction was a collection of leaders from every fraternity and sorority. We met quietly and promised everybody a seat at student government, that we would run one candidate from each house for some position in student government. And we formed a slate of candidates. And on election, you know, a few days before the election, we passed the slate around. We had fraternities competing against each other for voter turnout. And if you would vote for the entire Greek slate, you guarantee that your member would get elected. We ran Bill for student body president. Bill had no idea what ASUN stood for. He'd never been to an ASUN meeting in his life. And that was one of the first times that when a student body president became on the board of regents.
Oh,
and sure enough, the slate and the faction won. We took over in a landslide. They dissolved student government on us on the last meeting before the new people took over, so we had to go to student court to get student government reinstituted. It was quite exciting, and it was about the time of all the president's men and Nixon, and it was, I thought, wonderful. But as it turned out, Bill became the student body president, and Bill Miller and I became best friends. And so for the guy who was my mortal enemy, I was the best man at his wedding. He was in my wedding. To this day, I still consider Bill my best friend. We travel together. He was a lobbyist when I was in the legislature. We worked together. We still stay in touch. We travel. We play golf together. And I made a friend for the rest of my life by having somebody who was my mortal enemy to begin with. But, you know, it really points out the value of working with people and keeping an open mind and and having a greater good for everybody. And, Bill's a tremendous Nebraskan, and it's an honor to know Bill, and I'm glad I got to go to college with Bill. And, it's really what makes your collegiate experience.
So with that being said, when you took on some roles in the House, the IFC, at that point, say your 4 years is up and you graduate with what, a political science and economics degree?
Yeah, I got a double major, and I think I was 3 hours away from getting an English major too. At that point, I didn't take many general studies classes. I was pretty focused on things that I liked and wanted to do. I was lucky enough to be chosen as an innocent. And so that sort of capped off my collegiate career, and I applied to law school, did not get in, was on the waiting list, and was impatient, and decided that, I got to look for some other options. And so I was looking at law schools. Drake University had an interesting concept. They admitted half of their class based on LSAT and grade point average, and the other half you competed all summer in 2 classes, and they took the top 70 people out of that summer class. And we started with about 300 people. And I went to law school all summer, and I was number 71. I didn't get in. And I went back to UNL and enrolled in an MBA program. And on Saturday afternoon, I was back home in Mendon before school started on Monday. And the phone rang, and I happened to pick it up, and it was Drake Law School. And Drake said, "One of your classmates has had a death in the family. You're the first alternate. Can you be here by Monday morning?"
Wow.
I said, "Yep, I'll be there." And on Sunday, when I got my hangover under control, I headed off to Drake. I didn't have an apartment. I didn't know a thing. I hadn't registered. They told me they'd all figure that out. That was the start of my law school career. So
did you go to the liquor store on the corner and open up the phone book and go to apartments and go down the list?
I went and drove over to the law school Sunday afternoon, and we had lived in the dormitories at Drake, and so I had a roommate from Wisconsin. I knew he got in, and I had a guy who lived across the hallway from me, from North Carolina, Dave Denbor, and I knew that Dave had gotten in, so I drove around. I happened to see Dave wandering around the law school. I stopped, and I slept on their couch for about 4 nights till I could find an apartment.
Nice. So always finding a way, it sounds like, Doug. That seems to be the common thread in your stories. Always finding a way. Wow. And Drake is in Iowa, right?
It is. It's in Des Moines, Iowa. And so I did Drake for 2 years, and I, was a visiting student to Lincoln my senior year. And so I came back to Lincoln and went to law school that last year, made a lot of friends that I knew from undergraduate there, and had to get a job, and the only people hiring were the legislature at that point. So I went to work in the Judiciary Committee, and that's where I got exposed to the legislature firsthand. And I went back and worked in Carroll, Iowa, and the local district judge here in Red Cloud convinced me to move back to Minden, the place I swore I'd never, ever go. And I opened up a law firm, started from scratch with a young guy, and ran for county attorney, and got elected as county attorney. And, for our first case was a murder case, so we had lots of excitement, a lot of fun. But I always thought someday when I retired, I'd run for the legislature. And as it turns out, that first murder case we lost because of a technicality. And they wanted the county attorney needed somebody to go testify at the legislature about how this technicality prevented people from being convicted. And so I gladly went down. I had some experience. I knew everybody on the Judiciary Committee because I'd worked with them there, prior years. And I figured out that my representative didn't live in the district anymore, and he moved his family to Lincoln. He's a decent, nice guy. But at that point, I was single, and I said, you know what, I'm going to run for the legislature now. It's when I'm single and no children, and I can do this, and I'll get that itch out of the way. I got elected. I defeated an incumbent 2-1. And 14 years later, I'm still in the legislature. Never dreamed that would happen. I was going to serve 4 years and stop. But you get elected as a chairman at an early age. And then I was lucky enough to be elected speaker for the last 5.5 years, and really enjoyed the legislature. It was a tremendous experience. And then the University of Nebraska job was open. They needed a chancellor, and the previous chancellor had some problems. And they needed somebody who could go back and repair community relationships. And I'm not sure how they ever hired me. Once I was hired, I looked back thinking, wow, was I a long shot on that deal? But it's now been 13 years. I've been chancellor here at the University of Nebraska, Kearney. And my life roadmap, I wouldn't give you much for it. I didn't have it very well drawn out. It's really been a journey of opportunities, and don't burn your bridges, and working with people and relationships. And I just feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I got a chance to do all that stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, like you said, the journey that life takes you on is often unexpected, but as long as you keep your options open and do the right things, it seems like things work out well for you. It's your stick-to-itiveness of making the most out of situations that maybe weren't optimal for most people.
Yeah, I think that there's the idea that you got to keep the big picture in mind. And just as I was committed to, I wanted to live in a fraternity house, I think that's a good idea. I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to serve in the legislature. You find ways to make those happen. They may not happen right away, but in my case, I think the good Lord shined on me pretty hard, and maybe I didn't have some other options, and I just made the best of what I had. But I love what I do, and I feel like I'm very, very fortunate.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So you mentioned some of these already, but what advice would you most like to pass down to other occasions currently in the house?
Well, I think as an undergraduate member of fraternity, one is you got to respect the fact that it's a gift to be there. And we look at, there's always problems. There's financial problems, there's recruitment problems, there's building problems. It seems like there's always obstacles. But at the end of the day, a group of young men who are living together that have a common goal, a common situation, there's great strength in that. And the ability to learn, I still remember as a pledge, cleaning the showers and the bathrooms. I hated that. But you know what? That was an awful good thing to do because that contributed. I did that part, and others cooked, others maintained the grounds, others, organized social events. We all had strengths, and we kind of put them together. Individually, we'd have been pretty much failures, but together, we had great strengths, and that's true of so many institutions, and I think that's true of the legislature. Not everybody's a superstar, not everybody's a Rhodes Scholar, but they all have different skills and traits. If you can get them to work together and have a common goal and mission, that's a pretty unbeatable force. And so I think that's true. The other is that if people join fraternity solely, and believe me, I enjoyed every minute of my social life. I thought that was tremendous. But there's other great values of the fraternity, and one of them is the ability to be disciplined. The other part is to obviously have some academic success. At the end of the day, going to parties isn't going to pay the bill. It isn't going to, help raise your kids. The ability to recognize and network and to learn really does help you. And at the time, you may not see the value of taking a math class or a science lab, but long term, those are really good things to do. You get broad experiences, and I think fraternity gave me a chance to. I would have never gone to concerts or plays or things, but we did that as a group, or I did that with a date at the urging of my fraternity brothers. Those were experiences that, left to my own devices, I probably would have never done it. Now they're the sort of the spice of life, and they're the things that really matter. I see that happen with so many fraternities, that there's strength, but it all starts with the core. You want to be successful academically, because that really is going to be the key to your future.
And sort of that forcing function, I really like that of the fraternity, mentioning stretching yourself outside your own boundaries, either just by proxy because you're around those people that think a different way, or in a group event, or the urging of some other people that aren't directly, say, you're a roommate if you lived alone or lived in an apartment with another roommate. There's absolutely some absolute strength in that. And I like that you said about academics, focusing on that first. I think that's great advice. So, that being said, given all that you've done in life, what do you look forward to in the next stages of your life?
You get so busy day to day that sometimes it's the danger of getting older. You stop with your enthusiasm and you're more into survival. But there's a lot of things I want to do for the university, and I think the university is a very strong system. I look at UNL, it's a great land-grant institution, but the medical center, we are so lucky in this state to have the Nebraska Medical Center, and to the excellent research they do, and the ability for them to treat us as citizens and train our physicians. But UNO and UNK are also really vital parts of the system. Just as if we all work together on our fraternity and we're stronger, that's true of the university system as a whole. And so for me, I want to spend the next foreseeable future trying to build collaborative efforts and strengths. We're doing that with the medical center right now, and I think that'll will be good for students. It's good for the citizens of the state. I've got 2 daughters that I've been very blessed with to see them grow up, and one complete a university education. The second one, I'm sure she'll either be at UNK or UNL. And I'm very appreciative of those, that educational opportunity. But I think my wife's a district judge, and she's also a 2-time UNL grad. We owe a lot to the university. We want to give back. And much of its time, effort, energy, and opportunities, it's also financial. And we want to give people the same great opportunities we had. And I would hope that other people would feel the same way.
It's admirable to think about that in the next stage of your life, how you can give back and how you can give other people that chance. So finally, my last question for you is, Doug, is given all the experiences you have, talking about, the past and also the future, what are you most proud of in life?
Oh, I think clearly my education, I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the opportunities I had at an early age and to do some of those things. So I'm very proud of my education, and I'm proud that I had a chance to work and live in Nebraska. I really believe in the university system, but I believe in the state of Nebraska. So, I've got, legislative accomplishments, things that the Court of Appeals and so on that I hope are there forever, that I had a chance to do. But it also is the opportunities that were given to my children because I was able to instill in them a work ethic. The same things that I think my parents instilled in me, I'm very proud that I think my children have that as well. And I want to make sure they're very successful. And quite frankly, when at the end of the day, when you're all done, nobody's going to sit down and read your resume. They're going to look at what your children did and how they turned out. And so I'm very, very proud of that.
Well, terrific. Thank you, Doug. And I want to thank you again for taking the time to be interviewed by Acacia. And I think this is going to be a great story for others to learn about your journey and learn about where you are now. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you. And I'm proud to be part of Acacia. And I look forward. I've got so many old friends that you lose track of. And so I appreciate you giving me a call and we can do this. You've mentioned some names that have brought a smile to my face as I think of, Jim Verween and so on. I think of Mark Beck. Mark was one of my best friends in a pledge class, and Mark might have been the smartest person I ever knew.
Wow.
From Omaha. Mark went to med school, was super bright, and graduated with honors and was murdered in Kansas City doing what he liked to do the most, and that was working in the ER. And,
wow.
It's been a long time since I thought about Mark Beck, but it brings a great smile because he was just the biggest idiot on our pledge sneak. But, it probably was one of the few times in his life that he wasn't studying. He kind of let loose on the pledge sneak, and to this day, it just brings a great smile to my face to think about Mark Beck.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing, and again, thank you for your time.